When an Irish vet disappeared in North Wales in 2012, it sparked the largest search ever undertaken by North Wales Police. A 37-year-old Irish woman had unfortunately crossed paths with a man with a very, very unsettling past, and she paid the ultimate price. This is Murder of Crows.
Say that you're ready, but you won't like it. You say that you're ready, but you won't like it. Silence all the crows, lining up in little rows. A sudden chill surrounds me. Silence all the crows, see come out and say you're old. A sudden chill.
I'm Steve, and in this episode of Murder of Crows we're looking at a case from my homeland. It's a Welsh case, and this is the case of Catherine Going, who disappeared on the 12th of October 2012. Catherine Going was raised by her parents John and Maureen on a farm in County Offaly, Ireland, and she loved the rural life. Growing up around animals meant it was very little surprise when Catherine went on to become a vet. And such was her love and passion for the rural life that she was drawn to the town of Mold in North Wales. The picturesque small town of around 10,000 residents had a similar feel to the environment that she had grown up in. And she lived in the area after securing a job at Evans veterinary practice in the town. What added to the feeling of a home away from home was the fact that her best friend Jane Doyle had also qualified as a vet and was also a vet at the same veterinary practice. So as seemed perfectly natural, the two became housemates and shared a home in the nearby village of New Brighton. Catherine loved being a vet, and her long-term aim was to return home to the family farm and eventually set up her own practice. But due to the actions of a depraved and selfish predator, this long-term plan would never come to pass. On Friday the 12th of October, Catherine anticipated a fairly quiet weekend. Her housemate Jane Doyle had made plans to return to Ireland for the weekend to visit family, and Catherine herself had no particular plans for the weekend, so she was just going to relax for the weekend, and then she had plans to meet up for dinner with a friend on the Sunday evening. But after a trip to a local Asda at around 8:30 p.m. on the Friday evening, she was not seen or heard from again. She missed the dinner with her friend on the Sunday evening, and when Jane Doyle returned from Ireland at around 11 p.m. on the Sunday evening, Catherine was not at home. So while concerns were certainly raising It was when she failed to show up for work on the Monday morning that concerns became so great that she was finally reported missing to the police. What followed was the largest search that North Wales Police had ever undertaken. A search of land, air and water over the next 25 days ensued, and there was no trace of the fun-loving, vivacious vet. Her Renault Clio had been found burnt out at a disused quarry a week after her disappearance, which increased feelings that she may have come to some harm. But still no trace of Catherine herself had been found. There was no sign of forced entry at her home, but police did find some fabric tied to the frame of the bed, and traces of semen were found on the bed itself. A police tip-off eventually led police to search in and around the area of the nearby town of Sealand, where on the 31st of October a grim discovery was made. Human remains were found, and further remains were discovered on the banks of the River Dee in the days that followed. But to date, Catherine's entire remains have not been found. However, the remains that had been found held key evidence. DNA was found on the remains, and this DNA matched the DNA from the semen that had been found on Catherine's bed. And perhaps more importantly, the DNA had a match in the police database, and this led police to a 47-year-old local man called Clive Sharp. Now, Clive Sharp had first come into Catherine's world when he started a relationship with Jane Doyle, Catherine's housemate. While he seemed quite charming and had a good job as a production manager at a clothing factory, Catherine had never really been keen on the man. But being a good friend and not wanting to cause any sort of problems, she had begun to allow Sharp to stay over for evenings at the shared home. But during their investigation into the people in and around Catherine's life, they found in Sharp a man with a dark and disturbing past. At just 16 years of age, Sharp first came into contact with the police for sending indecent letters and making obscene phone calls. When he was 17, he was convicted of raping a 15-year-old girl, which led to him spending 3 years in prison. In 1994, he was convicted of sexual assault, during which he attempted to strangle the victim. The list goes on and on. In 1996, he was convicted of falsely imprisoning and wounding a sex worker that he had paid for sex. A report that was written following this conviction is quoted as saying, "Sharp admitted that his offending could escalate and result in murder." it is thought that this might be his ultimate fantasy. Despite this warning of his dangerous nature, Sharp ultimately served just 8 years in prison. 8 years. By the time of Catherine's murder, Sharp had not only been married, but had left that marriage and embarked on a string of short-term relationships. And while still technically married, he began a relationship with Jane Doyle, Catherine's housemate, which is how he came into contact with Catherine Going. And this started in mid-2012. Earlier in the day of the assault on Catherine, it transpired that Sharp had left another woman tied to a bed after she refused to fully comply with his sexual demands. And presumably because he could be linked to this woman, he did not take that any further. But he did know that his erstwhile girlfriend Jane Doyle was away in Ireland, so he knew that Catherine Going would be home alone, making her a vulnerable victim in waiting. So he waited for her to fall asleep before he entered the home and subjected her to what can only be described as a horrific 4-hour ordeal of rape and beatings until Sharp ultimately murdered her and went on to dismember her body. When Sharp's movements were subsequently traced, he was seen on CCTV at around midnight, leaving his car in a hotel car park near to Catherine's home. At 6:45 a.m. on the 13th of October, he moved Catherine's car into the car park of the Beaufort Park Hotel. He visited Asda, where he bought a petrol can, bleach, a Halloween mask and a screwdriver. No concerns there. At a hardware store he bought a hacksaw and blades. He moved the car from the car park where he'd parked it and then torched it at the disused quarry, as I mentioned earlier. He also attempted to make texts from Catherine's phone and also attempted to use her bank card, not in an attempt to steal, but in an attempt to show that Catherine Going was actually still alive. However, the totality of the evidence, including DNA and CCTV, was irrefutable, and Sharp ultimately pled guilty to Catherine's murder, but he has never revealed the full details of what happened during the horrific assault, nor what happened in the days that followed when Catherine Going was dismembered and her remains ultimately disposed of. Now, during the court proceedings, Catherine's sister Emma Maguire, who had aided in the search for her sister, refused to take her eyes off the monster who had so callously taken the life of her sibling. Following the court proceedings, she was quoted as saying, "That man has caused my family unimaginable pain, suffering and grief, and the recurring nightmare of what he did to Catherine before she died. My parents are heartbroken. They will miss her smiling face, her passion, and the energy she exuded. My sister was a wonderful woman who lived life fully. Our lives will never be the same again. Sian Sharp, who was the estranged wife of Clive Sharp, waived her right to anonymity as a sex attack victim to reveal details of Sharp's violence and aggression during their marriage, including rapes and vicious beatings. While initially he was a kind and caring man during the first years of their relationship, there was clearly a seething anger under the surface waiting to explode. After 3 years of escalating violence, she eventually found the courage to throw him out of their shared home. Reflecting on his later arrest and conviction for this murder, she said, "Clive is a sick, sad man. They should do to him in prison what he did to Catherine Gowing. Kill him and chop him up. I'm sorry, but that's just..." While acknowledging Sharp's guilty plea, Mr. Justice Griffith Williams adjourned sentencing, believing he needed to fully weigh up the case in deciding a minimum term. He stated, "There are a number of concerns about this case which lead me to the view that I should have time to reflect upon it." There was no question that he would be given a life sentence, but he added, "I have to work out what the minimum term you will serve before the parole board may consider you for release, if you are ever to be released." At a later hearing, he was ultimately sentenced to a minimum of 37 years, with the judge noting that this would have been a minimum term of 42 years had it not been for the guilty plea. So while justice was ultimately served, it was cold comfort to the family and friends of Catherine, whose worth to them and to the wider world was immeasurable.
Of my family and all those who love Catherine, we thank the police for their diligence, dedication, integrity and professionalism in dealing with Catherine's murder. We thank the community of Flintshire, North Wales and our home community of Kinnitty, County Offaly, and all who have been here with us in our darkest time. Your kindness and continued support has been wonderful. Truth is truth. The facts are the facts. Our humanity shines when we conduct ourselves with kindness, with compassion, with integrity. When we speak the truth. Catherine was brutally murdered. That is a fact. Catherine conducted her life with love, with kindness, with compassion, with integrity. That is the truth. The book of evidence painstakingly compiled by North Wales Police was based entirely on the facts. The sentence, deliberated and levied by Justice Griffith Williams, means that today our world is a slightly safer place. No other woman will be harmed by the man who murdered my sister. That is a good thing. Catherine was an exceptional woman. She was a wonderful daughter, sister, and friend. In life, she measured herself against the following quote by Albert Pine: "What we do for ourselves dies with us. What we do for others and the world remains and is immortal." She was a beautiful light. She shone very brightly. She enriched the lives of all she encountered, all God's creatures. Her light is gone from our mortal world. She now shines elsewhere. Thank you.
This video is dedicated to the memory of Catherine Gowing, a completely innocent victim of a sad and sadistic man. May she rest in peace. Thank you for watching another episode of Murder of Crows. I'm hoping to upload at least one new video every week, so if true crime is your thing, then feel free to give me a cheeky sub and click the old notification bell and etc, etc, you know the drill. And with all that being said, thanks again for taking the time to watch Murder of Crows, and I'm Steve, and I'll see you when I see you.